that something remarkable happened in 1987, which is the mention of creation dropped to almost zero, and the mention of intelligent design moved up to take its place. Now, I don't know what you conclude about this. We'll get to 1987 in just a second. But my first reaction when I saw all these older versions is, my God, didn't these people learn anything from the Nixon administration? Burn this stuff. But it wasn't burned, and it's still around, and we know what's going on. Now, some of you may know what it was that happened in 1987. But for those of you who don't know, this is a timeline showing you might say, a legal history of litigation regarding evolution in various courts. And what happened in 1987 is a Supreme Court decision known as Edwards versus Aguillard that identified creationism as a religious doctrine. Literally within a month of that decision, the drafts changed from creation and creationism to intelligent design and designer. Basically, there's no question that this was simply relabeling the old product with new packaging to make it palatable. And again, this is something else that came out remarkably so at the trial. And what the judge wrote is the plaintiffs meticulously presented, you had to be there to see this, several drafts, some of which were completed prior to and after the court decisions, and 3 astonishing points emerge. 1, definition of creation science is identical to the definition of intelligent design. Cognates of the word creation appeared about 150 times, were deliberately and systematically replaced with ID, and the changes occurred right after the Supreme Court said that creation science is religious. So the history of this was very straightforward. The members of the judge also wrote, and this was an extraordinary thing to hear. I'm going to move my lapel pin down by my microphone so you can hear the audio clip in just a second. The judge says, you know, the citizens of the Dover board of Dover were very poorly served by members of the board who voted for the ID policy. Here are 2 of them up here, former members of the board, now voted out of office. To me, it's remarkable to hear a federal judge talk this way. It is ironic that several of these individuals who so staunchly and proudly touted their religious convictions in public would time and time again lie to cover their tracks and disguise the real purpose behind the ID policy. I don't know about you, but I didn't know federal judges talked like that. And I found that absolutely astonishing. Now, there is at least one person who understood what the policy was all about. All of you know who that person is, and he called it exactly right. Here he is.
Last month, the people of Dover, Pennsylvania voted to dismiss school board members who supported the theory of intelligent design. But according to some people, that's not all they voted out.
I'd like to say to the good citizens of Dover, if there is a disaster in your area, don't turn to God. You just voted God out of your city.
Pat got it right. This really is a religious idea. And what's astonishing is to see Robertson saying exactly what this is all about. And once again, I think regardless of what you think of the Reverend Robertson, I think he was exactly right from his point of view that this was a religious question. Now, the question I think that all of you in Ohio have to consider is this critical analysis lesson plan that you now have in Ohio, is this really different from the Dover approach? And I've read opinion columns saying immediately, oh no, it's got nothing to do with it, it's entirely different, the Dover decision is not precedent. That's true, it's just a district court decision. But all of the information that I have talked about tonight was unearthed at the Dover trial, and it's all available. After all, the Discovery Institute came here and told you, didn't they, that they do not want to teach intelligent design in public schools. That's just not their policy. Yeah? That's Stephen Meyer. He's the guy who said that. Stephen Meyer is the author of a book called How to Get Intelligent Design into Public School Curriculum. So if you hear him saying momentarily, no, we don't want to teach intelligent design in Ohio schools, I think the proper way to understand that is we don't want to teach intelligent design in Ohio schools yet. We'll figure out a way to do that. And the lesson plans, of course, don't have anything to do with creationism or intelligent design, do they? Well, guess what? If you look very closely at those lesson plans, what you will discover is the topics for the 5 lesson plans. Of those 5 lesson plans, 4 of them come directly out of the Pandas and People book, the creationist book that was relabeled as an intelligent design textbook, and the 5th one comes directly from Michael Behe's book, Darwin's Black Box. These are also found in a whole series of other intelligent design textbooks, including Icons of Evolution by Jonathan Wells. And you might ask yourself, well, are any of these really intelligent design books? Go to the Discovery Institute website, and you will find that these are touted as the source books of intelligent design. And the judge realized that correctly, and he wrote something that I think applies directly to Ohio, and as I think worth thinking about. And that is, intelligent design's backers have sought to avoid the scientific scrutiny which we have now determined that it cannot withstand by advocating that the controversy, but not idea itself, should be taught. And what Judge Jones wrote was, this tactic is at best disingenuous and at worst a canard. The goal of the intelligent design movement isn't to encourage critical thought, but to foment a revolution which would supplant evolutionary theory with ID. And that is part and parcel of the lesson plans now adopted in the state of Ohio. People might say, well, let's be fair. Isn't the scientific community biased against intelligent design? Isn't it prejudiced? Doesn't it suppress it? I think that idea overlooks how often science deals with novel scientific claims. But what we expect people to do is to do real research to back up those claims, to submit them to peer review, to engage in the give and take of scientific argument, to win a scientific consensus, and eventually, if the evidence is on the side of these ideas, no matter how goofy they sound at first, and no matter how much the scientific community opposes them, they will eventually find their way into classroom and textbook. Now, intelligent design advocates like to say they've got a new scientific idea too. And you know what? If they wanted to do this, I'd be thrilled. I'd say, see at the cell biology meetings, see at biochemistry, see at the earth science meetings. We'll have fun, we'll argue about this, and I'll show you that you're full of it. But you know what? Maybe you'll do the same thing to me. Maybe you'll come up with the experiments, with the evidence, with the analysis that will show you're right. And if you are right, in 10, 15, 20 years, we won't have to go to the school board and argue. You'll automatically be in classroom and textbook. But their idea of how the scientific process should work is not exactly like this. It is rather like this. And that is, they would like a direct injection into classroom and textbook, and they'd like that injection with the aid of the political process, which is exactly why they've concentrated not on research, they don't produce any, not on peer-reviewed publications, and not on winning scientific consensus. What they have concentrated on is public relations and political pressure. You might also ask yourself, how many scientific organizations around the country have criticized these Ohio lesson plans? And a few of them are shown up here, including my own scientific society, the American Society for Cell Biology, a society that is resident to many, many Nobel laureates and one of the largest experimental societies in the United States. The source for all of this information, by the way, is a great organization called Americans United for Separation of Church and State. If any of you are interested in their activities, they have a very simple web address, AU, for Americans United, au.org. These are the organizations lined up against the Ohio lesson plans for fairness, for balance, for equal time. I also have to show you the organizations that have lined up in favor of the lesson plan. Here they are. And you can make your own decision as to whether or not this is a lesson plan in which you, as the people of the state of Ohio, should be proud. What is at stake in this? And quite frankly, this is where I want to close. I think what is at stake literally is everything. This is a cartoon, last panel of a cartoon, that a friend of mine sent me. And you can see there's a young man here. I assume he's Hindu or Pakistani. He's in a science laboratory studying science. And you can see this says the creationists found unlikely support among students in China and India. And this young man is saying, oh yes, America, we would like it very much if you would teach your students, your children, religious dogma instead of science. We'd like their jobs. And I think to pull absolutely no punches, what is at stake in this argument, in this debate, in this political struggle, isn't whether students will learn evolution. I think that's small potatoes. I don't think a generation of citizens will be harmed if they don't quite understand the difference between allopatric and sympatric speciation. I think what is difficult is to contemplate a generation of Americans growing up